Hello, my name is Kevin, also known as Yunsu on iRacing, and in this video I'm going to be breaking down a lap at the PORTIMAO International Algarve circuit for this week's SuperFormula combination in the fixed series. PORTIMAO with the SF car, an absolute downforce machine, is an incredible amount of fun. This track is like a roller coaster with a ton of elevation change, blind corners, high speed, mid-speed corners where the aero of the car is really working and you've got to trust that the car will stick. Also quite a wide track too, so you always know you can find just that little bit more time if you roll a little bit more apex speed into the corner. That doesn't mean we're still going to find a way to use curbs both on the apex and on exits to eke out that advantage even more so. The lap that I've set here is a 1 minute 22.7 set during an official race session. It's the outright fastest lap of the week so far in the fixed series, so it makes for a great reference lap to compare to. The hope is that you guys can take away something of value or of use from this video that you can incorporate into your own laps to improve your driving experience for the rest of the week here. So without further ado, we'll get things started with an uncut hot lap from the cockpit view, followed by a corner-by-corner analysis where we'll talk through all the reference points and general philosophy that we're going to take to attack each corner with, as well as some general tips throughout the lap. Alright, we've of course got the OTS burning away on this lap, but that doesn't take away from the fact that all of our reference points and the general approach for each corner is still going to remain the exact same. Heading into turn 1 here, we're going to be using a lot of curb, specifically the painted red curb on the left. This track has, I believe, 3D curbs, so all of the red and white serrated curbs are going to unsettle the car on turn-in and cause some oversteer on exit if we happen to catch tires on it. So for turn 1 here, critical that we place the left side of the car on the paint and keep those right-hand wheels to the right of the white line and on the track. The braking point is between the two lines, the 100 and the 50, so 75 meters. We're going to hit the brakes hard, 100% braking, and then immediately start to peel out of the brakes as we focus to get as close to the orange apex curb of this corner. We're going to turn in for the corner right before the white line marked with the 50 board, and the general philosophy here is keeping the minimum speed up and accelerating out of the corner. That's what's going to give us the downforce to really stick it through here and not invalidate on the exit, as it's so easy to do. So here we're going to peel out of the brakes, roll as much speed as we're comfortable into the corner, get nice and close, almost brush that inside orange sausage apex curb on the right, then immediately nail to 100% full throttle to continue to accelerate, keep the min speed of the car high, then accelerate for the rest of the corner. The track limits here are going to be the curbs on the left, so as long as we keep our right hand wheels on the curb itself, not any further over, we won't invalidate the lap. This is considered turn 2 here, and because the braking zone of turn 3 happens so quickly after this, we leave about a car's width to the apex here. This just helps with the line and getting the car perfectly straight before fully committing to the brakes for turn 3. Braking here is deceptively early. It's easy to try and push your braking zone here, but you'll find yourself locking up that inside front really easily and then completely overshooting the apex of the corner. The braking reference here is about 20 meters before that white line that we see on the left-hand portion of the screen, hitting the brakes nice and hard, trusting that the brakes will slow down the car and not lock that inside front, then carrying actually a good amount of speed into the apex of the corner, getting nice and close to that orange curb on the right-hand side, making sure that we both rotate the car but also keep a decent minimum speed as we try to build the exit out of 3, which will really help us with turn 4. Preparation for turn 4 is everything, and it starts with the exit of turn 3, getting on throttle nice and early but also from a decent minimum speed, minimizing any excess wheel spin that we're going to have, but feeding that throttle and accelerating the car, building the speed, building the downforce that we're going to need to stick it through turn 4. For an almost flat out left-hand turn, there is a lot that goes into turn 4 to get it right. Starting with the track position, I find that swinging to mid-track, then turning in from mid-track gives me the best results to have a good apex speed and a good exit. If you try, and it's tempting to try and use all of the track on the right hand side, there's just not enough grip out there. It's better to stay on the rubbered line, which is in the center of the track. Turn 4 is also blind, so to find references to help us position the car for the exit, I find that there's a lamppost, and then later, further into the corner, the main grandstands come into view, which kind of line up with the exit curbs. This just helps with the positioning and general confidence to get through the corner. As mentioned before, turn 4 is not flat no matter what you do, so the general technique here with the throttle is to breathe off of it as you're cresting just after you're turning in for the corner. Then once that grandstands come into view in the distance, that's when you know that you're pretty much safe for the amount of track that you have on exit and can start to feed the throttle back in for the exit of the corner. Throwing fourth, short shifting to fourth through the corner also helps with calming the rear axle, as I find third just has a bit too much torque and the smallest little misplay with the throttle can see you snapping on the exit. The final thing here for the exit of turn 4 is just making sure that we're running the car out onto the curb and using all of it on exit. The red and white painted serrated curb is track limits, so as long as we keep the left-hand side wheels on the curb, then we won't invalidate. And that concludes Sector 1. It's so easy to throw away your lap before it's even begun by invalidating it at the exit of turn 1, but you have to balance that with the confidence and the trust that the car will stick through there, where if you actually kill too much speed, you'll peel the downforce off of the car and go wide anyways, so prime place to make up time is turn 1. Turn 4 is also another great place to make up time. If you get the line just right, you don't have to bleed out of the throttle as much. Trust that the car will stick on exit, nail the throttle nice and early. That will carry a nice exit all the way down to turn 5. Spotting our braking point for turn 5 can be pretty tough, as we have to react to this dip that happens, which brings into view our braking point, the dark patch of concrete on the right. That's when we're going to hit the brakes firmly to 100% and actually hold the peak pressure for quite a while to really stop the car, put the anchors on. This will help with the later phase of the braking zone, which will require light trail braking as we really start to crank in the steering lock. We're going to spam the downshifts here as it's going to help with the engine braking, again to really help stop that car. We're going to end up turning in a little bit early because the front is going to scrub just a bit, which is the reason why we want to stop the car, is because at these speeds the car is not going to be generating any usable downforce. We're going to notice quite a bit of understeer by the time we get into the apex of the corner, which is the midpoint of this orange sausage curb on the left here. By stopping the car, getting it rotated, we can get on throttle nice and early and really hustle the throttle pedal to accelerate the car on exit. By getting nice and close to that orange sausage curb at the apex, we can aggressively open up the steering and start feeding in the throttle nice and early to build the speed out of the corner. we'll find ourselves again using the painted portion of the curb on the exit rather than the serrated curb, as it will cause a bit of traction loss and will kill the drive out of the corner. Passing through turn 6 now, and we're actually going to avoid using the serrated curb on the left, as it's just going to induce a bit too much understeer on the turn in for 7 here. Turning in a little bit early to make sure that we really get down to this apex, which is the orange sausage curb on the right, and we really need to be ahead of the car here as everything happens quickly. I like to treat turn 7 and 8 as a double apex. In an ideal world, we hold full throttle up until this point here before rolling into the brakes and then peaking our brake pressure once we're on the red portion of the curb here. We can start to bleed out of the brake and roll good amount of speed into the second apex, turn 8. The gradient, the uphill, will actually naturally slow down the car a lot as we're fighting gravity. So it's all about balancing and making sure that the front end is hooked up through here. Then we can pick up throttle once we're past the apex, and then nail full throttle once we're on the green portion of the curb on exit. Again, the serrated curbs just don't offer the grip under traction and will cause a bit too much instability, completely killing the drive. Cresting over the hill and entering this dip, we're going to make sure to get to the right hand side of the circuit. It will just help with opening up the arc through turn 9 and helping us position the car for what is crucially the entry of turn 10. Turn 10 and 11 can be an extremely satisfying corner if you get all of the different variables correct, but get one of them wrong and you can find yourself bleeding a lot of time through here. The first thing we want to make sure we're doing is using all of the track available on the left hand side, but not using the serrated curb, as it's just going to jostle and unsettle the car under braking. In a long decreasing radius corner like turn 10 is, where the front axle, we're asking it to do a lot, slowing down the car and getting it turned into the apex. The last thing we want to have happen is any sort of moments under braking, whether it's rear locking or front locking, where we're just going to end up completely overshooting the apex of the corner. As for a braking point, as soon as we come over the crest and enter the entry portion of turn 10, we could also use the white line as a reference on the left hand side. That's when we're going to slowly roll into the brakes and not peak the pressure too quickly. It's really easy to generate micro locking here in the front and or rear, which will just cause you to sail past the apex. The peak amount of grip right is in the middle of the track. Going into the inside too early will compromise the line, and I've experimented hanging the car out further left and then really trying to turn it in for a later apex, but you find yourself fighting the vehicle too much, fighting the front end to really get the car into the corner. The general line here is to kind of just float mid-track, hold a medium amount of pressure with the brake pedal, have good feel over what the front axle is doing and load it up nicely so that you can continue to peel off the pressure of the brake and trade that for steering angle as you get into the apex of the corner. One thing to keep in mind is that it's really easy to overslow the car for this corner. You have quite a lot of space on exit, and crucially, you're right at that threshold where the downforce is generating a usable amount of grip. And if you find yourself going in 5-10 kph too slow into the corner, you could feel at the limit of the car already and kind of put a false barrier as to what the car can do. Whereas if you just trust and roll that little bit more extra speed into the corner, the car will hook up, especially if you get those inside tires right by that orange sausage curb at the apex. The car will really hook up and then nicely release on the exit. We can use the painted curb again on the exit. There's quite a bit of space there. Be wary of the bump though as you pass about halfway through that curb, and then we can basically stick to the inside of the track here for turn 12. The exit of turn 11 marks the end of sector 2. We've got the big braking zone into turn 5 at the beginning of the sector, where traction is very critical. Making sure that we're getting a good exit out of turn 5 can win us a lot of time. Then for the rest of the sector, it is all about the trail braking. Through these long decreasing radius, transient low corners, we want to be balancing braking and steering, trading braking pressure for steering angle all the time, and carrying a good amount of speed into the apexes here to keep the wings generating a bit of downforce and grip. Then not being lazy in getting back to throttle, getting back to full throttle, as the higher apex speeds here means we don't want to compromise the exit by getting to throttle late. I'll reiterate again the idea that sometimes if you're even 5 kph too slow into these corners, it can feel like you're past the limit of the car because the aero is bleeding off, and just the car will feel sluggish and understeering into the corner, where all you need to do to correct that is actually increase the speed that you take into the entry of the corner. Coming through turn 12, starting sector 3, it only has 3 corners and it starts with turn 13 here. We're going to hit the brakes as this white line appears on the right hand side of the screen, making sure that we're using the full extremities of the track but not touching that serrated curb. Again, this will cause outside front locking and we will just go completely straight on and miss the apex of turn 13. We're going to hold our peak braking pressure briefly before bleeding out of the brake and then end up dropping the brake completely quite early and getting into this corner, treating it like an early to mid apex. The uphill gradient of the corner will naturally slow down the car a bit and keep the front loaded through here, so we can hustle quite a bit of speed through the apex. And considering the line through here as well, there's quite a bit of space on exit that we can use, so we can start to pick up throttle early, straighten up the wheel, and accelerate out of the corner. We can feel free to use all of the track on the exit of turn 13 because in most cases we'll have enough time to swing back to the left side of the circuit to prepare for the entry of turn 14. For a braking point, I like to use the red painted curb on the left, which doubles as a turn-in point here. We're going to hit half pressure with the brake, immediately start to peel out, and get the car turned in for the apex of 14. The apex drops away quite significantly, so it's both easy to snag a front brake and get caught being behind a little bit here, where if you turn in a little bit too late, you'll just never find an apex and have to run on the dirty part of the circuit around the outside. If fast in, fast out was a corner, then turn 14 would be the perfect example of that. We want to carry a good amount of speed into the corner, hold a decent minimum speed, knowing that the track radius will open on the exit. We also need to resist the temptation to crank on any additional lock with the wheel and be opening the wheel throughout the exit of the corner. That's when we can start to feed in throttle and ultimately try to get to full throttle as soon as possible, as that's going to hold all the way down to the start-finish line. We can run up and use the full width of the curb on exit here. Track limits again are keeping 2 wheels on the curb itself, so our 2 inside wheels. And then we're entering turn 15, the last corner on the circuit. The only thing to keep in mind here is to use the minimum steering angle to make it through possible, as it's easily flat out, and on a hot lap or in qualifying you can continue to hold the radius of the corner on exit to cut a little bit of distance towards the line. The approach you take into Sector 3 will in part be dictated by how you took the previous 2 sectors. If you're down on time, then these are the final few corners that you have to make up on it, and if you're up, then just hold on to what you have. These corners are so notoriously easy to overdrive. Throwing a bit too much speed in can give you a massive moment on the exit and just completely throw away a good lap. If anything, you want to prioritize the exit and full throttle point out of turn 14, as again, you're going to be full throttle all the way down to the start-finish line, and in a race scenario, all the way down to the braking point of turn 1. And with that concludes my Portimao track guide. For those of you that are wondering, my non-OTS pace was in the neighborhood of a 1 minute 23.5, 1 minute 23.6, so you can expect about an 8/10 jump once you throw the OTS on, or that's the delta that you should be looking to chase after. I hope that you guys found something of use throughout this video that you can implement into your own driving and see a noticeable difference in your lap times and or confidence with the car. Thank you for watching, and until the next video.